I brought props. I want to tell you a story, and it's I don't want to bore people with a coming out story because I think everybody's got a coming out story. Not that they're boring, but I want you to tell you a different kind of coming out story. I first came out as a gay man, or a gay boy, I should say, when I was about 18. And I told my mom. My dad had died recently. I told my mom, I said, well, I'm gay. I think I like guys. And after she got over crying and saying, you're not going to have grandchildren, she began immediately trying to set me up with people. And she didn't know my type. And I didn't know my type. But I knew whoever she set me up with wasn't the right type. Well, I want to tell you my coming out story into leather. Anybody who knows me knows I've been in the leather community here for God only knows how many years. And I've been in the leather community almost as long as I've been involved in the gay community. But where it really started for me was when I was 14. And this is where the props come in, excuse me. Hang on. Okay. I was 14 years old. My dad was a professor and a scientist, and he spoke at a lot of places, and he had a trip to Europe set up where he was going to speak in about 7 or 8 different cities. He was going to be gone for a month. And at that time, they would fly you over and fly your spouse with you. So my mom and dad were going to go to Europe, and they said, we're not going to miss taking our son. He's 14. We're going to get to go all over Europe. What a great idea. So I went along. And it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And I learned a lot of things. I learned that Americans really were pretty ugly back in the 60s in Europe. Not us, but I saw a lot of examples of it. But I was 14, it was 1964, and we're flying over, and on the airplane, they would give out magazines. And I brought along a magazine they gave out. This isn't the actual one, but it's close. And this magazine was when I first knew I wanted to be into leather. It was a Life magazine. And the centerfold was a story called Homosexuals in America. And there was a picture of all these guys, a lot of them in leather, standing around in a bar in L.A. Now, to a 14-year-old, I didn't care what the article was about, but I wanted to meet all those guys in leather. And that stuck with me. Years later, I got involved in the Dallas Gay Political Caucus and a lot of events here, and I began hanging out with people who were politically active, and I got politically active, and that was great. And I made some really great friends. And I was also at the same time going out dancing, doing all the kind of things that young gay people do, but I knew there was something more I wanted. And I kept seeing these guys in leather and thinking, man, that's what I want. I want that hyper-masculinity. I like that image. That's what I'm going for. I don't care about drag queens were interesting and all that, but that wasn't my thing. So I asked some friends about it. I said, well, where do those guys hang out? And said, oh, you don't want to go there. It's dangerous. And immediately I found out where that was. So for months, I would drive my car and park in the parking lot of what was called the Sundance Kids down on Maple Avenue. And I don't know if the Sundance Kids was the only leather bar. I don't think it was. But it was the only one I knew about. And I would sit in the parking lot and I'd watch guys go in and out. And that's what I wanted. They were the guys. That was the visual. That was the idea. I didn't know what they did, but I figured it was probably rough, and that's probably what I wanted. And I sat in that parking lot, and I came back week after week after week, and I got really comfortable in that parking lot. And I had bought me a leather jacket at the Army-Navy store, and I already looked the part. I just didn't know what to do. So I finally said, you can either sit here in this parking lot till hell freezes over, you can get off your ass and go inside. So I went inside, and I got past the doorman, and at that time they had dress codes. I got past the doorman. I went right up to the bar, and I figured, okay, I made it past the door. Anything's possible. Walked up to the bartender. I said, I'll have a martini. And he said, you'd rather have a beer. And I said, no, 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 no. I really want a martini. He said, no, no, trust me. You want a beer. So he gave me a beer, and I took it. And I should thank him, and I never did. And I stood by the wall with my beer, and I realized nobody there had martinis, especially not up with a twist, which is what I wanted. And then I realized he knew I came there looking for something, and he knew if I wanted to find it, I needed to blend in. I needed to look the part, I needed to act the part, I needed to get comfortable there so that people would talk to me. And eventually they did. And eventually they let me into their little circle of people. And at that time, the leather community wasn't so much a community, it was just a bunch of guys that liked rough sex, which is fine with me. But so I hung around them long enough, I began to know people and began to get in contact with people. And I continued my political activism, and I would do that some nights, and then some nights I kept on my leather jacket, I'd go to the leather bar. About that time, I got involved with a young man who wanted to be my boy, and I mean that not meaning underage. I mean, if you know anything about the leather community, there's the whole daddy boy thing. And we got into a relationship, and we ended up moving out to the suburbs with the little white picket fence and the chains on the bed. And no, really. And we sort of isolated. You know how people do. It's love. You isolate. And we isolated. That was in the early 1980s. And all the people that I had come out with in the leather community were still in the leather community. I just didn't see them for a while. Well, unfortunately, during that time, I sobered up. I didn't realize I'd had a problem till you live with another alcoholic, or another addict, I should say, and you see their problem. So I went into Al-Anon, he went into AA. Eventually, I sobered up as well and found that the reason I could never afford to pay my taxes was because I was spending $35,000 a year on cocaine. That was in 1985. Unfortunately, he decided that leather was just theatrics and it really wasn't for him. And he also decided that I really wasn't for him, and that was probably a good thing. And we split amicably. And I eventually tried to find something in my life. I bounced around for a little while, and I didn't know what it was. And then I was making films at the time, and I was getting back involved with the leather community. I started getting back involved with the leather community a little bit at a time. And the reason I did was I opened up my closet. I had stopped wearing leather. I'd stopped doing any of this. And inside my closet, this fell out. And I realized, why the hell did I ever put it down? That's what I really liked. So I put on my hat. And I put on a vest. And I got back in the leather community, which was becoming a community at that time, because the leather men and the leather women had to come together because of the AIDS crisis. What I unfortunately found was most of the people who were my mentors and my friends were gone. So I figured this can't last forever. I've got to get back involved. I need to be involved. I want to leave at least a mark on this. I began getting involved with a group called the National Leather Association. It was a big club. There were 6 people that would meet on a regular basis at the community center. And 2 of them were straight. And I didn't know what to do. Well, it turns out one of those straight people ran a BDSM club. So I went over. I was the leather man at that straight BDSM club. But making those inroads and making those allies was a good thing. And eventually, we began attracting more people in LA. We attracted more allies. We became a community. Today, National Leather Association Dallas has anywhere between 150 and 200 members, and you'll have 60 to 70 members at each meeting. I'd like to think I was a little part of that. And I'm glad that it's grown. What I also did was I started making films again. And I made a film. I wanted to document the leather experience. I made a very short film called Leather with a few of my friends. It was all in black and white. Unfortunately, most of the people who were in it are also gone. But it was very, very well received at some film festivals. And the Dallas Film Festival asked me to show it. And that was in 1995. And that night they asked me to say a few things. So I said a couple of words after I don't remember what I said, but I made some kind of joke as, and by the way, if anybody's here tonight, I'm single and I'm looking. I don't have a date. After the showing, after everyone was leaving, it's about midnight at the Dallas Theater Center, a boy walked up the aisle and said, "Sir," and I said, "Yes." He said, "Were you serious about what you said?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "About not having a date." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, it's still early. Maybe we could go grab something to eat." And that was 18 years ago. And Patrick, my boy, is still with me. And we're still together. The other good thing that came of that was I got a chance to explore a lot of who I was. And I got a chance to reach out and do some things for other people. I started writing. And at the same time, I also began attending his church, which was the Cathedral of Hope. Now, I was a Jewish kid, or raised Jewish, and I had been to the MCC back when it was where the Resource Center is now. It was a different kind of church then. There was lots of amening and waving handkerchiefs, and it scared the hell out of me. Because that was just too weird. Luckily, I had spent some time in Unitarian churches and realized, okay, there's something spiritual I'm still looking for. And I attended Cathedral of Hope with him a few times and got hooked and really liked it. And found a ministry there, which just seems really weird. And if you come on any Sunday, we have the leather pew, and we wear our leathers to church. And the reason we do is because these are special. And you wear special clothes to church. And we wear them to let everybody know there is a place for you, whoever you are. I even wrote a book about it. And to my surprise, when Creating Change was here in Dallas, that year, Sue Hyde of a National Gay and Lesbian Task Force called me and said, "So we're thinking about awarding you the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force Leather Leadership Award. Would you accept that?" And after I picked myself up off the floor, I said, "Sure. Why not?" And that year I won the award. And the most exciting thing to me about it was that on the plaque it said, "For reconciling leather and faith and bringing that message to other people." So that's my story. Thank you.